Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Veronica and I run a small crochet plushie business called Looping Teddies. In today's video I will be teaching you how to make this mini bee, which is my own pattern, and this has been requested for a while, so it's finally here. This is my first ever tutorial, so leave any feedback or any unclear steps down below and we will definitely figure it out together. And as a small bonus, I will also be teaching you how to make this rainbow bee, which is basically the same pattern, but with very different color changes. If you're only interested in this pattern, you can jump to this timestamp for just the rainbow bee mod. And if you are not a crocheter yourself, but you really enjoy these mini bees, I'm releasing them on my Etsy today, so I will leave a link down below to my store and you can go and shop there. So let's get into the materials you will need for the regular mini bee. Okay, so here are all the materials we will need. The main color of the bee is the yellow. Then for the regular bee, we will be using some black yarn. You could also, if you rather like to use some brown yarn for the stripes, you can also use some brown yarn. And then for the wings, we will need a small amount of white yarn. And then you will need the corresponding crochet hook. I use a 4.5mm crochet hook for my yarn. We will need a stitch marker. I use paper clips as my stitch markers. Then we will need a pair of 8mm safety eyes with their corresponding backings. We will also need a needle with a big tip as you use for chenille yarn. And then we will need a scissor. So now let's get into the pattern. Okay, so for the first round we will be needing some yellow yarn. And you can always do a magic ring as your starter. Personally, I like to do the chain 2 method. So we will be chaining 2 onto our hook.
So that's 1 and 2. Then we will be doing 6 single crochet into the second chain from the hook. And 6. And now we will place our stitch marker into the last stitch we just created. And we will move on to round 2, which is 6 increases, so 2 single crochet into every single stitch of the previous round. So that is 1, 2, that's the first increase done. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So that is 6 increases done, and we will put the stitch marker back into the last stitch, and then we will move on to round 3. So for round 3 we will be doing a single crochet first and then an increase into the second stitch. So let's do a single crochet first and then an increase. So 1, 2. And you will keep doing that until you reach your stitch marker, ending the round with an increase. Now at the end of round 3 we will put back in our stitch marker and you should have 18 stitches total. So now we will move on to round 4 and you will put a single crochet into every single stitch of the previous round, totaling 18 single crochet. But wait on the last stitch and don't complete it. So on the final stitch of this round, we will be doing a color change from yellow to black. So first of all, we will pull up a yellow loop, and after doing that, we will grab our black yarn and get the end out, and now we will put the end over our hook so that the short end faces inside of your plushie. And now we will hold that black yarn and pull the loop through both of the yellow loops. You can kinda tighten the yellow yarn, and this is how I like to do my color changes. So now we are working with the black yarn and putting the stitch marker back into our work. So now moving on to round 5, we will be doing 18 single crochet in black. So now for round 6, we will be doing exactly the same, so single crocheting around in black, but on the last stitch we will be switching back to yellow. So now on the last stitch of this round, we will color change back to yellow. So we will pull up a black loop and switch back to yellow by pulling through. And now for rounds 7 and 8, we will just be doing some single crocheting around in yellow. And on the last stitch of round 8, we will see each other again, color changing back to black. So that is round 7 done, and for round 8 we will be doing exactly the same, color changing on the last stitch. So now on the final stitch of round 8, we will be switching back to black, and for rounds 9 and 10 we will be single crocheting around in black, and we will see each other again on the last stitch of round 10, where we will be switching back to yellow. So that is round 9 finished, and we will be moving on to round 10. So now we are on the final stitch of round 10, and we will be switching back to yellow. So we will pull up a black loop, switch over to yellow and pull through. And now we will be moving on to round 11, which is just single crocheting around in yellow. So now we're on the final stitch of round 11, so we will do that, and now we will fasten off the black yarn. So what I like to do for that is pulling up the loop a bit more and putting the hook outside of that loop. So now what we will do is flip the bee inside out, and now we can tie off the black yarn. So we will find the beginning of this black yarn, and then we will tie a double knot, so that prevents the yarn ends from ever sliding out of your plushie. So we will tie that knot and pull it tight, and now we can cut the black yarn off. So that fastens this yarn off. So now we can flip the bee right side out again, and now we will be adding the safety eyes. And what I like to do is see where the color changing is happening, so right here, and I want that to be the underside of the bee. So what I will do now is place in my safety eyes between rounds 2 and 3. And I used 8mm safety eyes for this, and I will put them just across from each other, so checking right now if they are actually across from each other. So now I will count the stitches. There is now 7 stitches in between the safety eyes, but personally I just like to see if it looks right, so that they're just across from each other. Between rounds 2 and 3, and now we will put on the backs of the safety eyes. If you are interested in how I put my safety eyes on, I have explained that in a previous video, so I will link that below for you if you are interested. And now I will press down the back of the safety eye with my safety eye tool. If you don't have one, you will just press it down by hand. And now I will put the other back on as well and press it down. And now something else that I like to do is melt the backs of my safety eyes. So I use a lighter for that and just melt the back of the safety eye a bit. And I press it down so that the backing becomes bigger than the actual hole in the backing. So that is a pretty quick process. I will do that for the other side as well. And if you've never tried it out, it actually doesn't take a long time, but it makes a huge difference in the safety of your safety eyes. So now we can flip our bees right side out again, and now we will get to stuffing the bee. So you will need some stuffing for that. I just use this regular fiber frill stuffing for my plushies, and we will get that right into the bee body. And you can stuff your bee.
You can stuff your bee as much
soft
as you like
it to be.
That's
all
personal
preference. So personally, I like to stuff my plushies a bit more firm. So that's why I'm really pressing the stuffing down into the bee body and try to get it all in there. That will just make it easier for me to crochet in the next round. And now after stuffing, we will be moving on to round 12, which is the final round for the bee body, and it consists of 9 decreases. This will leave us with a total of 9 stitches at the end of the round. So for a decrease, I like to use the invisible decrease method. So you will put your hook into the front loops of 2 stitches and pull through both of those front loops and then complete a single crochet as usual. So that is the final stitch of this bee. So now we can fasten off the yarn, and I like to leave a small tail because we just need to close it up. So cut the yarn, and now we will pull the loop through and kind of pull on the tail to tighten it a bit. So now we will sew up the remaining hole. So we will thread our needle with our yarn, and now we will go through the front loops of the final round and pulling the hole tight. You can also check if your bee is stuffed tight enough, how you want it. And mine is actually stuffed a little too loose, so I will now add just a bit more stuffing until I like the firmness of my bee. You can still add that now, before you close up the remaining hole completely. So just stuff as much as you want, and then we will keep on sewing this hole closed by going through the front loops of this final round and pulling on them until you can't really see a hole anymore. So I will keep doing that, and then once I don't see a hole anymore, I like to go through on random parts of this last round just across from each other, just to make it really secure. And now we will go through the middle and come out with the yarn tail at a random spot on our B, get the needle off, and now we will hide our yarn tail by using our crochet hook and just hooking it and pulling the yarn tail into the body of the bee. So now the body of our little bee is finished, so the next step we will do is make the 2 wings. So now to work on the wings, we will use the white yarn, and as I said before, I like to start by chaining 2, but you could also use a magic ring. But now I will chain 2 with my white yarn, so that's 1 and 2. So now we will be putting 6 single crochet into the second chain from the hook, or into your magic ring if that is what you prefer. So now I'll put my stitch marker into the last stitch of round 1, and then for round 2 we will be increasing 6 times, leaving us with a total of 12 stitches. So after completing round 2, we will put a slip stitch into the first stitch of round 2. And now we can fasten off our white yarn. I like to leave a tail a bit longer because we do want to sew on the wing to our bee later on. So now after fastening off, we can pull the loop through and pull it tight. So this is what the completed wing looks like, and to complete your bee you will need 2 of these, so you can now go back and watch the instructions for the wing to make a second one, and we will meet once you have 2 of the wings. Now that we have 2 of the wings completed, we will be sewing these into the bee body, and you can do this a couple different ways. Personally, I like to place my wings kind of closer together, but you could always put them further apart, so that is all up to your personal preference. So now to start sewing the wings on, we will thread our needle through the first yarn tail of the first wing. So now to sew, I will hold my bee the way I want it. So this is the top side of my bee because that's not where the color changing is happening. And I usually like to start sewing my wing at around round 5. So we will center the wing between the 2 eyes of the bee, and we will put the first stitch into the body of the bee, pulling through, and now we will go back into the wing and back down into the body, and always checking that we are in the middle between the 2 eyes. As I said, I like to start sewing on the wing at around round 5, and I usually end sewing between rounds 8 or 9. But the good thing about sewing on these wings is that there's not really a right or wrong way, because it's all up to personal preference. So you could always stop earlier or put your wings further apart just the way you want it to. Just go through the body and the wing a couple of times so that the wing sits on the bee securely. So after putting in the final stitch, I like to go out on the body at a random spot far away from where I'm sewing on the wings, and then I'll fasten off the white tail. So now on to the second wing. So now we will thread our needle with the second wing and place it where we want the bee wing to sit. and hold it in place with our finger. The nice thing is that you could always also put it further apart like this, but as I said, I like to keep mine pretty close together, so that's what I will be doing for this tutorial. So now sewing on the second wing is kind of the same as the first one. We will go into the body, and as you can see, sometimes there's some stuffing that will come out when you sew. That is not a problem at all, and we will do it kind of the same as with the first wing. We will just hold the wing in place and go through the wing and the bee body a couple of times until we feel it is secure and in the right place. So now after finishing the sewing, you can look at your bee and see if you like how it looks. Personally, I think that my wings are a bit far apart right up here, so I will try and fix that now. So I will now go back up here to the front of the wing, and I will place a stitch into the bee body that I think will make the wings closer together up front. So that is a way you can kind of fix these little mistakes. So after doing that, I will look at my bee once again, and now I am happy with the placement of the wings. So I will now put the yarn end through the bee body and come out at the same spot where I put the other yarn tail out. So we will do that. So now we will get the needle off of the thread, and now we will just tie another double knot between the two yarn tails and pull it tight. And if you have long yarn tails like this, I usually like to trim my tail a bit. This makes it way easier to hide the yarn tail with your crochet hook. So now we will put the hook inside of the bee body and come out in the same spot as the yarn tails are, and just kind of grab at the yarn tails with our crochet hook and pull them inside of the body of the bee. This might take you a couple of times, but you will just keep doing that until all of the tail is gone. So now the last thing we need to do is hide this yarn tail off your starting point of the wing. So now we will insert our needle into the body of the bee before threading the needle. And now once you have your needle inserted, you can add your yarn tail through the needle like this. So now we will pull on the needle and pull the yarn tail through the body of the bee so that it comes out on a random spot on the body. And now, just as before, we will take our crochet hook and hide this yarn tail inside of the body of the bee. And sometimes it comes out again at another random spot, so you will just keep doing that until everything is hidden. And now you will do the exact same thing on the other side of your bee. And just like that, your bee plushie is complete. So for the rainbow bee mod, we will use the exact same tools. We will need scissors, a crochet hook, I personally use 4.5 millimeters, a yarn needle, a stitch marker, a pair of 8mm safety eyes, and some fiber fill. The yarn you will need for this project is mostly yellow, and then a small amount of red, orange, a green, some blue, and then also some purple. And once again, for the wings you will need a small amount of white yarn. So for this mod I will be going a bit quicker than before, but if you need some more time you could always pause the video or go back and let it play at a slower rate. So to start out, you can use the chain 2 method or the magic ring, and we will be putting 6 single crochet into round 1. Then for round 2 we will be doing 6 increases. For round 3 we will be doing a single crochet and then an increase for a total of 18 stitches in this round. For round 4 we will be single crocheting around, but wait on the last stitch since we will be color changing on that. So now on the final stitch of round 4 we will be color changing to red. And if you want a more in-depth explanation of how I like to color change, you can always watch the first part of the video where I explain it on the regular bee. And then for round 5 we will be working 18 single crochet around in red yarn. And then for a cleaner color change I will actually complete this around in red yarn. So completing this stitch in red, and I will start to color change on the next stitch, so this one. So that's where we will attach the orange yarn. So we're just color changing one stitch later and just doing a regular color change, and after that we will keep working with the orange yarn. So for this mod I actually prefer not to work with a stitch marker. I just color change every time I have completed a round with a different color. So that's the way I like to do this, but it's up to you if you want to do this as well. But for round 6 we will be crocheting around with single crochet in orange. So after completing round 6 in orange, we will be color changing back to yellow for round 7. So that's what we will be doing now. And the yellow is already attached, so just grab that. So what I like to do at this point is fasten off the orange and the red yarns. So we will just get in there, remove the hook, and we will look for the yarn tails of the red and orange yarns. And what I like to do is tie a double knot so that it's more secure before actually fastening off those two colors. I just like to do that right now because later it would be more difficult to untie all of those different colors and there's a higher risk of them getting tangled, so that's why I tie off these two colors before starting on the next round. So now for round 7 we will be single crocheting around in yellow and we will color change on the last stitch just as before. So now after completing this round in yellow we will be color changing to green next. So I use this really light green, but you can always use different shades of the colors. These are just suggestions or just what I am using today, but you could always use different shades of those same colors. So round 8 we will be single crocheting around in green, color changing as before. So after completing this round in green, we will color change to blue. I chose another really light tone for my blue color, but you could use whatever blue tone you have lying around. And round 9 will be completed in blue, color changing as before. So now after finishing round 9 in blue, we will be color changing to purple, which will be the next color. So I like to pull my loops tight when color changing. It makes it easier for me to work. And now round 10 will be completed in purple. So now after completing a full round in purple, we will color change back to our yellow yarn. And now we can fasten off all of the other colors that we still have attached to our bee. For that I like to flip the bee inside out, and now we will be tying double knots on every single color that is still attached and fastening off all of them except for the yellow. So now we can flip the bee right side out again, and we will be adding the safety eyes in the same place where we added them on the regular bee. So for the placement of the eyes, we will see where the color changing is happening, and we will put that to be the bottom side of the bee, and I will be adding my eyes between round 2 and 3 just across from each other like so. And I like to look at my bee and check if they're actually across from each other. And now I'm adding the backs to my safety eyes and fastening them, and then I will be also melting the backs of the safety eyes. I explained this more in depth on the regular bee, so if you are interested in learning more about my process, you can always watch that part of the video as well. So now after flipping the bee right side out again, we will be doing round 11 in yellow, just single crocheting around. After finishing round 11, I like to reattach my stitch marker, and now we will move on to stuffing the bee. As I explained on the regular bee, I like to stuff my plushies pretty firmly, so that's what I'm doing right here, but you can stuff it the way you want it to. After stuffing, we will be moving on to round 12, which is decreasing around, leaving us with 9 stitches at the end. So after round 12, you can fasten off your yellow yarn, leaving a short tail so we can sew up the little hole. So now pull through the yellow loop, pull it tight, and now we will be closing up the hole just as with the regular bee. You can thread your needle with yellow yarn tail, and now we will be going through the front loops of the last round, pulling it tight until there's no little hole left. After closing up the hole, I will poke down my needle through the bee body and come out at a random spot, and then I'll hide the yarn tail using my crochet hook. So now the bee body is finished, and we will be moving on to the wings. So now to work on the wings, we will use the white yarn, and as I said before, I like to start by chaining 2, but you could also use a magic ring. But now I will chain 2 with my white yarn, so that's 1 and 2. So now we will be putting 6 single crochet into the second chain from the hook, or into your magic ring if that is what you prefer. So now I'll put my stitch marker into the last stitch of round 1, and then for round 2 we will be increasing 6 times, leaving us with a total of 12 stitches. So after completing round 2, we will put a slip stitch into the first stitch of round 2, And now we can fasten off our white yarn. I like to leave a tail a bit longer because we do want to sew on the wing to our bee later on. So now after fastening off, we can pull the loop through and pull it tight. So this is what the completed wing looks like, and to complete your bee you will need 2 of these, so you can now go back and watch the instructions for the wing to make a second one, and we will meet once you have 2 of the wings. So now after completing both of the wings, we will be sewing on the wings into the bee body, which will be done exactly the same as with the regular bee. So now we will take our bee and hold our wing in place where we want it to be. Again, I will start sewing at round 5, so exactly where the red yarn is. So I like to hold down my bee wing with my thumb, and then we will go through the wing into the body of the bee, coming out through 1 stitch of the body and pulling tight, and then we will be stitching along, making sure that we stay in a straight line between the 2 eyes of the bee, so we are sewing on the wing correctly. And I will stop sewing right where the colorful part of the bee stops, so at around 10, or where the purple part of the bee is, so around right here. And what I will do is just get the needle off of my yarn, and then we will be sewing on the other wing, threading our needle, and we will go exactly the same. So we will hold the wing down with our thumbs, and then making sure that we are placing the wing correctly. So I keep checking in and looking at the bee if that is looking right, and then I will just sew on the wing exactly as the other one, from front to back, from the red row to the purple row. So when you finish sewing, you want to end up in the same stitch as you did with the other wing. This makes it easier to later on hide the yarn tails. So now I will check if the placement of the wings looks correct, and now we can take the needle off and we will tie a double knot between the 2 tails of the bee wings. So after tying the knots, you can now cut off the excess length of the yarn tails, and you can then hide the yarn tail inside of the bee body, just as we've done before. Now to hide the start of our bee wing, we will be putting our needle through the wing and down into the body, and then out through the body, and push it down slightly, and now we will thread the yarn tail through the needle, and now pull on the needle to make it go through the body. And then we can grab our crochet hooks and just hide the yarn tails inside of the bee body. And then of course we will be repeating that for the other side as well. And then we have completed our little rainbow bee.
So that's it. You completed your mini bee or your mini rainbow bee. So yay! Don't forget to post your bees to Instagram and tag me at LoopingTeddys. I can't wait to see your creations. So thank you so much for using my tutorial, and don't forget to like this video if you did. Leave me a comment if you have any questions, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I will be seeing you again next week. So bye!